Hi, I'm Amos Elroy, host of the Progressive Update, and I'm happy to present a guest today. This is in regards to some upheaval and some malconduct in the Democratic Party of Oregon. There's basically a mismanagement of proceedings and sidestepping of rules that is of concern to any political person who engages in the Democratic Party. And I think that really lessons learned should be for all states and activists across the country. This is just a case study. So I hope you enjoy the segment. With us is Larry Taylor. He's been working in the DPO, the Democratic Party of Oregon, to restore some order and rules. And I want to ask you, Larry, what is the nature of the recent grievance that you've had with the
Central Committee?
Central Committee, yes.
There's two parts to it. The first part is that we are objecting to the way in which the delegate selection plan for the 2020 convention was written. The bylaws specifically assign this to the Rules Committee, which is made up of elected members from all across the state. So it's the elected people writing the rules for conventions, of which the delegate selection plan is one. What happened was that the previous chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon set up a separate committee of her own appointees and then directed them to write this. And she wasn't completely transparent in what she'd done. She initially said that this committee was to do the Affirmative Action plan only, which wasn't a piece that everyone was interested in. And so we thought that if we allowed her to delegate that to a special committee, she would play nice and give the rest of it to the Rules Committee. But instead, she augmented her initial committee and gave them the whole thing. And we in the Rules Committee didn't know what they were doing until it was publicly revealed on April 1st, April Fool's Day appropriately. So that was the first thing, was the procedural way. And it's not like we're offended, but they did things that we don't think that the Rules Committee would have done, because the Rules Committee is made up of people who, more or less study parliamentary procedure and understand the writing of rules and understand democracy more than just a random collection of people that the chair had put together. So specifically what we are objecting to in the way the plan was written was a couple of things. The worst one is that they allowed for plurality voting. And the problem with plurality voting is that it allows for vote splitting. So if you have one delegate that is really, if you have several delegates that are really popular and one delegate that's not so popular, you could have the popular delegate splitting the vote and the unpopular or less popular delegate being elected. And there's no do-over. So it's just, whoever gets the most votes until all the delegate slots are filled, go to the convention. Historically, we've done a majority vote, so you keep voting until delegates receive a majority of the votes of the people voting, and that way you're assured that you get the will of the majority is served. The other process that they could have followed was one of the preferential voting models, but they didn't do that either. Mm-hmm. So what this has is the net effect of filling the convention with convention tourists who haven't been there before necessarily. The Democratic National Convention is the highest order of meeting inside the Democratic Party. So you can actually change the bylaws at the convention itself if you could conceivably do that with 2,500 members in the room. But it is the place where, ultimately decisions can be made. The next lower order is, of course, the quarterly meetings of the Democratic National Committee delegates, and they can do things there, but then there's more restrictions on things like changing the delegates.
So there, it's very impactful, is what you're saying.
Yes, it very well could be. So you get delegates going to the convention who are not the majority choice and who go there and they're just dazzled by all the lights and, you know, Beyonce and James Taylor singing and everything, and they forget that it's actually a convention for nominating the candidate to represent the Democratic Party in the presidential election next November, or a year from November.
Right. And the affirmative action that committee work is, from what I understand, to ensure that there's a diverse plurality of people that are running for office, right?
Yes,
to be delegates.
Yeah, it's to ensure that the delegation actually reflects the ethnicity of the state. So there's goals. They're not mandates, but they're goals for African Americans and Hispanic and Asian Pacific Islanders and all the various minorities that we have. We have new categories this year for disability and youth. And I believe there's one for delegates or for veterans, but I don't know that for sure. But it's really to just set out goals so that the delegation is not, you know, straight white males.
So generally, that's not something that you would expect any disagreement, major disagreement on. But what other parts were snuck in besides that in the delegation to the special committee?
They carved out a special rule for the 2nd congressional district, which is the eastern 2/3 of the state. And what they specified was that you could have a hybrid meeting where people could gather in one spot for the convention to elect delegates, but they'd also somehow allow people to connect electronically. We don't think they have. Well, they're banking on technology that they've not used to pull this off. And if you think about how this could unfold, if there's 3 major candidates still in the running by the time we get to the Oregon primary, that means that the convention in the 2nd congressional district has to split into 3 caucuses, and then each caucus would have to run their own Zoom meeting or however they're going to connect electronically to I guess, hear delegate speeches and somehow vote. We don't have not used a viable voting system yet. And so there's just a lot of technological issues. And really, as Roberts says in Robert's Rules of Order, really the best meeting is where everyone is in the same room and you can see each other and you can visually connect and communicate with each other. And you know, when you start getting away from that, you just get lower orders of effectiveness.
Right. And so you've appealed to the DNC for the grievance, and what have they done so far? What do you expect them to do?
Well, we didn't. We were unable to get an appeal to the DNC by their deadline. So what we had asked for was an extension, because there really is no big rush on this stuff. The due date was, we had 15 days after the submission of the plan, which was May 3rd, 15 days to lodge an appeal. The people working on it had day jobs and they couldn't devote enough time to it to get it, put together. There were some requirements about notarization of signatures of people who were signing on to the complaint and all kinds of stuff like that. And so logistically, we were not able to do it. We filed for an extension and they denied it within 24 hours. So at this point, we do not have appeal in with the DNC.
So where is the grievance standing then?
Well, it's a little complicated. So instead of having the State Central Committee, which is the governing body of the Democratic Party of Oregon, approve the delegate selection plan, they called an emergency meeting of the executive committee, which is made up of largely a different group of people that then basically rubber stamped it. And during that meeting, we were trying to be polite, and so there was some debate going on about why are we doing plurality voting? Why are we doing a hybrid meeting in the second CD and not the other CDs? And then one of the officers called the question, and because they had packed the meeting with a 2/3 majority, the debate was ended and they went to a vote, and so the plan was passed. The people attending the meeting was not monitored by any member of the Credentials Committee. It was done by a staffer, and so there's some question about the legitimacy of the meeting itself, apart from it being inappropriate to use them for the approval of the plan. So what we're attempting to do is appeal to amend the plan at the next State Central Committee meeting, and hopefully we can convince, depending on how it's brought before the committee, either a majority or 2/3, that we can make these adjustments to the plan itself.
Okay, and so in terms of what constituents or party members can do to weigh in, what would you say? What would you recommend?
Unfortunately, it's kind of complicated to explain, but really, if they could contact all of the officers of the Democratic Party, of which there's a chair, 2 vice chairs, a secretary, a treasurer, and then 3 DNC members. Contact them, because they meet and they make decisions whether or not they're authorized to do so that seem to then get put into effect by the chair. They can contact those people and say, we would really like for you to follow the rules and not do these end run meetings for approval of this thing, and really follow the rules in terms of who has responsibility for doing what in the party going forward. So we don't have these kinds of disagreements, because it's exhausting and it's a complete waste of time, and it's really not what the organization is there for. We're there to elect Democrats to office and recruit Democrats into the party, not do all this inter-party fighting. And if they would just stop violating the rules, then we would stop wasting our time.
I understand that you were personally attacked also by the DPO chair. What did she accuse you of?
Yes, after this unfolded, then they make it very difficult to communicate to the other SEC delegates. So if you're ever given a list, you have to sign a statement that you'll never use this for anything else. So what I've been doing over the past couple of years is really keeping my own list of members of the party, so that if I ever needed to communicate to them, I could. What I did was I sent out a letter outlining the 7 things that have been violated in the approval of and construction of the plan. And first of all, the former chair responded and accused us of attacking the work of this fine group of people that she had put together to write the plan, shifting the argument from who did it to us attacking these poor, well-intended people that work so hard. Then the chair weighed in, and she didn't accuse me of anything specifically. She said, we don't understand what the motives of this person is, but you can figure out for yourself what he's trying to do. Why would he attack us like this? I only saw 3 of the messages that were sent out, but it was rather intense, and she seemed to send it to all the chairs within the party. And then people were emailing me saying, "Oh, Larry, you awful person! Why are you raising these issues and being a pain in the side of the party? Why can't we all get along and work together?" And it's like, well, we can if you would just follow the rules. So I only saw 3 of the emails that she sent out. By the time we got to the last State Central Committee meeting, I was feeling pretty overwhelmed with the attacks. But fortunately, we had a number of people who who saw how bad that was. And it is a violation of Robert's Rules of Order. You do not attack people and their motives. What this really is a discussion about ideas. And so even though it took 4 hours to do so, we ended up censuring the chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon for attacking me.
Yeah, that calls for a very unhealthy kind of environment, not just in regards to you or people that surround you, but in general, anybody who's involved and wants to work on things, right?
Oh yeah, and the meeting itself was not conducted very well. One of the speakers was called a dumbass bitch on the floor. Another one accused one of the people supporting the censure as being a Republican and they need to go back to the Republican Party. That kind of stuff is really not allowed, and it got way out of control. The meeting started at 1:15, and we finished the censure discussion by around 5 o'clock, and that's when we got to the point of the meeting where we approved the agenda, which is usually the first thing you do in a meeting. And then we had to be out of the room by 6:30, so there was really no time for any other business.
Yeah, I'm looking at all of these events from a perspective of a New Jersey person who hasn't yet looked really closely at my own state's performance, and I suspect that a lot of these things are across the board, across in different states and different in different committees. And I understand that you've dedicated yourself to studying Robert's rules and parliamentarism. And I understand that you have a couple of programs and resources that you share that people can go to and learn about it. Would you like to?
Sure. So I've been using Robert's Rules of Order since 1998 when I was chair of Multnomah County Democrats, and I knew the cursory stuff like how to handle a motion, how to handle debate, and that sort of thing. But it wasn't until 2016 when we got into the last election cycle that we started detecting behavior by the leadership of the Democratic Party of Oregon that was really suspicious. And they've had like 200 years to develop their techniques, and so I decided that I really needed to up my skills in terms of the Robert's Rules of Order, so I knew what our rights were, so I could work with others so that all of our rights were protected. That got me involved with the National Association of Parliamentarians, and even though I didn't start out to do so, I decided last year to go through the program to become a registered parliamentarian, which involved taking a battery of 5 excruciating tests and passing. And then I achieved that at the end of last year, and so now I'm going to go on and go for the highest level of status at the convention this year, which is the professional registered parliamentarian, which sort of fills out your accreditation. To help people locally, what we've done is we've started a virtual study group called the Cascadia E-Unit, which is where we do what most of the local groups do face-to-face, but it allows us to come together, practice the tools of Robert's Rules of Order inside of a meeting so everyone understands how the tools work. And then we always include an educational program along with it so that people can do more of a deep dive. And of course, we help anyone who wants to take either the admissions exam to the National Association of Parliamentarians or any of the advanced exams to make the arrangements and see that they're proctored and they get their opportunity for registration. So yeah, I'm deep in it now.
And you have a site called advancementofdemocracy.org, right?
Yes, and that's in addition to studying parliamentary procedure, that's the central site where we organize to do reforms of the Democratic Party. What we're facing now is just, what they did with the approval of the delegate selection plan is just the tip of the iceberg. We now have discussions going on in the Credentials Committee where, someone has pointed out that even though the chair of the party gets to appoint a chair and a vice chair of the committee, plus 1 voting member, historically the chair and the vice chair have voted, but it's clear in reading Robert's Rules of Order and how you interpret bylaws that they actually don't get a vote on the committee. They're fighting back on that because if the chair gets to appoint 3 votes to a committee with not very many members anyway, it's very hard to overcome some votes that they are weighing in on. And this goes back to a greater problem in that the chair of the party is not supposed to be the CEO and is not supposed to be the executive director of the party telling everyone what to do. It's not like a corporation where you have someone with a great overarching vision that they're implementing to ensure the success. What the chair is supposed to be is a facilitator who then works to determine what the will of the majority is and then carry out the will of the majority. And we haven't had that for well over a decade.
So tell me a little about that advancement of democracy.org site. What function does it provide exactly?
We are using it to organize. One of the problems in Oregon that has made the legislature unhealthy is that we have so many candidates who run with no challengers in the primary. There had been rules that protected incumbents, and that plus other tools that the legislature controls has prevented people from generally effectively mounting challenges to incumbents. And there's a spectrum of legislators, from really good ones who feel like they represent the public to others who really don't care what their constituents believe. They just go off and do what they want. And so what happens when you get a system that's unhealthy without challengers, then they feel completely unfettered to do whatever they want. This becomes especially egregious when you have things like the business community coming in and making threats to run ballot measures and then pushing around the leadership of the party, who then tell their people how to vote. We just had a pretty egregious example of this last week, where we had elected a number of members of the legislature to protect the benefits of our employees, of our state employees. And what happened was that the business community threatened to run a ballot measure to overturn a school funding measure. And the leadership decided that they would strike a deal with the business community and go after some of the compensation for the PERS employees, breaking their promise not to touch it. And they forced a majority of the Democrats to vote for their measure, even though some of them said they never would, including my own. She tearfully defended her vote last Sunday at a town hall. Ultimately, though, many of us believe that corporations are not people, and so they really don't have a dog in the fight other than them being a bully. And so, that's just pulling back the curtains on the sausage factory of what happens down in our capital.
Mm-hmm. Then just to mention, you also recorded like a bunch of instructional videos on Uphill Media that teach about Robert's rules, and those are available to anyone. Those are generally applicable to any state Democratic Party members, if I understand right.
Yes, any organization that has adopted Robert's Rules of Order as their parliamentary authority, and odds are they have, then what I have in these instructional videos are how you do various aspects, and really all the tools that are available for you to protect your rights inside of meetings. I think at this point we have something like 21 videos. I can't believe I can talk that much, but yeah, there's a lot of material out there to review. And it's certainly easier to watch a video than to read the book, because the book is this tiny little thing of 750 pages of very fine print.
All right. Well, thank you very much for clarifying some things for us, and I appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
All right.